Good evening and a very, very warm welcome. And our topic this evening is Silence, the Seed of Genius. The creative mind evolves in silence. And I'm very happy to welcome our speaker, Denise Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Chris. And it's always a delight to be with all of you. This is a very interesting topic, silence, the seed of genius. And if you think about it, do you want to be considered as a genius? Do you want to be a genius? There's an upside and a downside. And if you look at all those in this world who are considered geniuses, they're brilliant when they are displaying their genius, but the downside is that the genius is different from everybody else. And so therefore, a lot of times other people do not know how to interact with a genius. And so the genius isn't normal. Normal people don't feel comfortable with a genius. A genius doesn't necessarily feel comfortable with normal people. So it's a solitary existence in certain ways. And very often, because not everybody understands the usefulness and value of a genius, the genius is very often mistreated. And this is the tragedy of genius. But I was looking at some of the different descriptions of genius. And one of them is prodigy. So if someone is a prodigy, everybody wants to meet that person, experience, observe that person. Like a prodigy will generally be spoken of for someone who is brilliant in music or other arts. But again, that prodigy must live an isolated life in the reality of things. Or they may be fortunate to have a small number of people who really recognize and appreciate them and support them. So that is very, very good. And then there's another description of the genius, which is a gifted person. And if you look at that, that's, I think, the one that we will look at today. Because it connects, I think, very much with the idea of silence being the seed of that giftedness. I think that if a person is gifted, you can be a little bit gifted or you can be super gifted. And psychologists have studied the nature of gifted people. So there are certain characteristics that are quite typical of the gifted person. And that is also that person is not understood, not recognized, not included in the normal social environment. So again, the gifted person becomes also a solitary person. And actually, when you look at it in the context of spirituality, it becomes really very interesting. Spirituality, when it is spoken of in terms of the ancient scriptures of India, there are some interesting elements that talk about the yogi, the gifted yogi, the one who has a special access to a dimension of consciousness which is not accessible to everyone by any means. And there we would say that the giftedness of that person is that they have a gift from a divine gift, or a gift from God, or a gift from the Supreme. And what sort of gift would that be? And I think it's essentially the gift that is something to do with almost like a prophet type of person. So a prophet is a leader, but at the same time solitary, at the same time rejected, at the same time mysterious, and this person has a gift of being a conduit between those very subtle aspects of essential spirituality, of the Supreme, of the divine, and then the regular people of the world who actually are spiritually depleted. And so the gifted person in that way is fulfilling a service because it's a conduit. And so if you are a conduit between a source and those who must drink from that source, but who cannot make contact directly, then you have to be someone who's like a bridge. So one side of you is the everyday, regular material world and the people in it. And then the other side of you is the almost inaccessible, unattainable, very beyond a type of very subtle spiritual world of light, cosmic consciousness, cosmic energy that is people are sometimes a little bit afraid of, but nevertheless, it is a source of spiritual energy that is really needed by people, by nature, by society in general. And so I'd like to talk about that sort of gift. And how do you manage such a gift? You have to allow yourself to follow this pull that is there, a pull on the consciousness, a pull on the mind, so that this pull pulls you to that source, because that source has to use you. And so you have to allow that source to use you as a conduit. And very often what happens is that when this energy, or maybe even ideas, or anything is flowing through, this is the essence of being a conduit. That is, something is flowing through you that is not under your control. And this is one of the things that they say about genius, is it's pretty close to madness. And so you have to make sure that you're on the right side of that dividing line, and that you keep yourself sane, and that you don't get carried away with what is passing through you. So there is a certain equilibrium that is needed. I think the gifted person has to come to terms with the concept that, okay, something is coming through you, something extraordinary, something wonderful, and you do not own that thing. It is coming through you from a divine source to the people of the world. And so you cannot try to control it, or you cannot try to decide which way it should go, because that would be interfering with it. And so you have to learn how to be a conduit. And of course, the images for a conduit are quite accessible. A conduit is like a riverbed. So the river is going along the riverbed, and the riverbed has to just hold the river. And the riverbed has its own beauty. It's part of nature, and it's a very important part of nature, because the creatures of nature come to enjoy the water, the fishes, the birds, the animals. They drink, they wash, they swim around, they're there. And for people who live near a riverbank, and I do live next to a river, and there is something very extraordinary about living on a riverbank, because you always can hear the sound of the river. And in the place where I live, the river, because there was a drought, it dried up completely, which is very, very rare for this river. It's not a huge river, but it flows all the time, except it didn't flow for a few months this year. And so all the villagers were affected by that, because it's as if that river was a presence, a being who, when that being is there in that community, they feel nurtured by it. So I find this quite an interesting analogy for what is important about the conduit and this energy, this flow, this water that flows through, that nurtures the people, and that they just are aware of. They don't necessarily have a conscious awareness. It's more like something intuitive. The river will call people to it, and you will see people just standing there watching it, listening to it flow by. And by doing that, they feel that they are getting sustained and that they are nurtured just by the existence. And when the river was dry, you would hear people saying, "She's gone." Because in the French language, the word for a river is in the feminine gender. So, elle est partie, she's gone. And they would yearn for the river to come back. And then it came back and started flowing, and then people would feel easy. And I think also there are certain individuals who I will call gifted, and whose function in this world is to be conduits for this flow, the flow of spiritual energy, the flow of knowledge, the flow of some kind of nurturing feeling that makes everyone feel okay. And so I think that the person who's a genius must be quite, I would say, incognito, in the sense that, when you're looking at a river, you're not really much concerned about the riverbed, because you're looking at the water that's flowing through it. And you don't ever really see the riverbed until the river's not there anymore. And so this need to be incognito is connected with this idea of silence. So silence has a number of meanings in spiritual terms. It doesn't just mean that there isn't any noise. That's physical silence. Spiritual silence is something different. Spiritual silence means that the mind is still and quiet. and there's no thoughts running around. And that means that the person who goes for silence, who goes deep inside and becomes the conduit, that person needs to experience the importance of just resonating with the divine on one side and with the world when it's quiet on the other side. And the time when the world is quiet is before sunrise, generally speaking, before people go to work, before they wake up, in the early morning hours. In India, this is called the time or the hours of nectar. And nectar is also like a liquid, a honey, a liquid which carries something sweet, something nurturing, something healing, from one place to another, from a source to recipients. And so the person who is the silent, gifted one must be awake and aware in the early morning hours for that energy to flow through. On one side, the energy from the divine is drawn into the self, and it fills the self and also spills over. In that sense, the conduit receives and then lets that excess pass over and reach wherever it has to go without trying to guide it or direct it or send it somewhere or not somewhere else. No. Because if you do that, you're interfering with your gift. And sometimes if your gift is that ideas and concepts and spiritual thoughts and ideas flow through you, you will not necessarily know what is coming out of your mouth, but it's flowing and it's coming. And you may need to record it and listen to it afterwards. And there you're really very clear that this is not coming from you, it's coming through you. And that you, like everybody else, are a recipient as well as a conduit. And so there is a need to listen, to pay attention, and to make those ideas part of your own sustenance and your own nutrition, this nutrition of the soul. So silence then is to be able to operate in a resonance. A resonance, on one hand, there is the resonance with your own self. So for that, there is the practice of turning within. So this is why meditation is, I think, a very important part of the genius who goes to the seed of that silence. And the first step is to go very deep inside and try to connect with a part of yourself that is very different from the everyday self. And when you go into meditation and you go deep inside, then you do begin to explore the inner regions of your consciousness, to make contact with that essential part of the self, which is the soul itself. And when an individual is in resonance with their essential self, there's a very beautiful vibration or atmosphere that is created by that inner self-connectedness. And that's a very important part of it. And it is the first step of meditation. then you see the silent being will turn the attention to the source. And the source is also a silent seed. But the source is greater than yourself by a great deal. And so you turn the attention above, beyond, to a different dimension, to a different state of being, where you're really going deep into what is called the spiritual dimension of life. And you touch that with your mind, you touch it with your heart, and you make contact with that source and stay steady, stay still, connected with that. And you experience that there is a flow flowing through, a flow of energy, a flow of light. And you hold yourself like that for a good while. And something is being absorbed into you that you don't know exactly what it is, but something very pure, very bright. It is an extraordinary energy, which is very sweet, very full of love, very nurturing, very healing. And you allow that to almost take over your existence, and just be still with that. And that is a very special kind of meditation that can be practiced, especially when you are quiet, the world is quiet, nothing is happening. Maybe the sound of the river is there, maybe the sound of the night birds are there, but they are, that sound is part of a harmony that all adds up to a dimension of silence. And in that, you can experience insights, special states of deep understanding of aspects of life that otherwise you might be confused by or frustrated by, but everything seems to fall into place. And you become at ease with the things of the world that are not necessarily what you would want them to be. There are all sorts of things that are disruptive and disturbing, and sometimes even catastrophic. But in that silence, in that stillness, you can arrive at an understanding of what it is, and allow it to be whatever it is. Be in your own silence. And I think when you receive these kinds of insights, that as you pass through your day, you have an angle on the world which allows you not to be disturbed by disturbing things, and even which allows other people around you to, in a sense, pick it up and also not get disturbed by things that might otherwise disturb them. So on one level, it's non-verbal, but in other ways, it comes through as ideas, as thoughts, as conversation. And the genius will sometimes utter something that is exactly the right thing at the right time for whoever is sitting there. And they may receive something truly important, whereas you, through whom these ideas are flowing, you might not even notice that there's anything special coming out of your mouth, because it's not yours. It's coming from somewhere, coming through and going where it has to be. This is the meaning of being a conduit. So you're a conduit of thoughts, of ideas, of feelings, of energy, and then you have to understand that this is what you are, this is how you are to be, and allow that to be fine. The person who is like this also has a tendency to be solitary, to need a lot of quiet time. You know, there are some people who need a lot of social time, and they're not comfortable just when nothing's going on and just sitting doing nothing. But someone who is drawn to silence will like it, will want it, will need it. And even when there are a lot of social interactions, a person like this will afterwards want to take a lot of silent time. And in relationships, that person will need own time, some time for the relationships, but a lot of own time. And so sometimes the other people might say, oh, well, you're a bit antisocial. And I think this is one of the characteristics of the genius, is that the genius is different. And other people consider that that person is like antisocial and something odd. And sometimes this will be a reason why they may not treat that person very well. And so therefore the person who is like this also needs to develop certain strengths, which are very, very useful to have. Because in a sense, if you are a genius and your source is that silence, and you have to operate in the social environment, then you also need to acquire special skills which allow you to, on the one hand, be comfortable in the social environment and enable others to be comfortable with you, and also become quite adept at taking your space and taking your quiet time in such a way that people don't feel fearful or that there's something strange about you. And so these type of skills are very, very important for a person who recognizes that, I am gifted, and this gift is not mine, but it is for some purpose. And so therefore you need to become a trustee of that gift. So a trustee means you need to understand what it is, what it's for, and how you have to care for it so that it is able to manifest where it needs to manifest and how it needs to manifest, and not get in the way of it, and also not get afraid that there is this gift that is part of your life. And so because of that, you need to come to terms with the fact that you can't be totally like everybody else. And some people may find that difficult or distressing or unnerving even. And so I think a very important part of using the silence is to resource the self with that silence, and go into the depth of what one is and what the gift is, and know that the gift in a way has a life of its own. So you are a carer of this like living energy that is your gift. And that's, I think, a very good way to work with it. Because, you know, there are so many different dimensions of an individual's existence. And I think a person who has a lot of silent time and has a great gift, they become I think, more than usually aware of these different dimensions of your existence. And because you spend more time in silence, you become more aware of you can say, the non-physical dimension of life, which is the inner life. And sometimes it may happen that other people notice something about you which is different, and they might feel a bit afraid because they detect something that's out of the ordinary. And whenever people detect something out of the ordinary, it is very normal and very natural for them to be afraid of it, because it's like almost like the way people feel about magic. They love it and they're scared of it, and they want it and they hate it. It's something strange like that. So a person who is gifted in this way, who's genius in this way, you need to have some tactics at your fingertips that you can notice what's going on with people, and adjust circumstances so that they feel easy about the strength of your existence. Because I think when a person has a lot of time in silence, they're taking a great deal of spiritual energy, a great deal of spiritual power. And that energy can sometimes feel too much for other people. So therefore you need to learn how to keep it quiet, so that it's not overwhelming for other people. And these type of skills you learn along the way, and that's just part of your development, part of your maturing process as a person who is gifted with some extra something spiritual, but who's also part and parcel of the world as we know it. And so definitely you need to be able to operate on multiple dimensions and dance between them very easygoing. That's a very important part of it. I think a very important thing also is to be low key. Some people, they need to be recognized, and then if they have a gift like this, they will use it to get recognition, and this pollutes the gift. So you need to be careful about that. And if you are developing a state of fulfillment and contentment, ease in yourself, and not need anything special, any recognition or whatever, but just understand that there is something special about you, and that it's like between you and the divine, and not really, in a sense, not really anybody else's business. So you can be just normal with everybody else, and the specialness of what is coming through you can move out into the atmosphere, just like the presence of a river fills the atmosphere of the town or village or city that it's running through. It's an important presence. People are aware about it, but they don't get overwhelmed by it. Of course, a river is such a thing that every so often there's a flood. And this is something that a lot of people have been experiencing in different parts of the world, because part of the experience of climate change is that sometimes there is torrential rain, and sometimes the river becomes like a monster, and it takes over and floods and carries everything away. and can be really quite destructive. And so people are afraid of that possibility. And when it's not going on, then they forget about that fear, but every so often it comes, and it shows its possibility. And then this is just something that people, when they live in a place where there are possible floods or winds or droughts or any of these climatic circumstances, which are nowadays becoming more and more extreme, well, they get used to them and they take care of themselves around it. You wouldn't build a house on a floodplain, but you might go there for a picnic. And so in the same way, if you are that genius whose source is the silence and who sometimes becomes a conduit for a flood to pass through, well, when there's a flood, the river jumps outside of its banks. But the banks remain where they are. The river goes over the side and into the fields and into the houses and whatever, and wets everything and messes everything up and creates a lot of mud. And then it recedes and goes back to normal. And the people have to clean up and clear up. But this is the world that we live in. There are crises. There are moments where things get really, really big, really heavy, very, very excessive. And these are tests. And I think also, if you are a person who is gifted and who is genius, sometimes you're going to experience some kind of internal eruption, like an internal volcano or an internal flood or something like this, because sometimes that energy just does come through really powerfully. And sometimes it is very disturbing. And so one of the things that you have to learn is to have certain kind of internal spiritual powers of accommodating these things. And I think that you get a few experiences of this, and you acquire the skills and abilities to just stretch yourself to accommodate the big energies going through, and know that they will recede, and you're not overwhelmed by it. You just stretch yourself to accommodate it and then go back to normal as it's passed. And this is because the world we are in at the moment, the historical time that we are in at the moment, is very very prone to upheaval. And I think also the good thing about having access to silence is that whenever there is an upheaval, you go to that silence and the upheaval is calmed by your silence. So I've been talking about all these internal things, but maybe you might like to join me in a meditation where we will actually go together in a meditation to that place of silence, that place where you just resonate with your essential self, and you go to that source of silence and open yourself up to that energy, and allow yourself to receive that kind of gift, and allow yourself to be nurtured and to have that resonance fill you and spread beyond you out into your community and beyond. So let us try that. So for meditation, take a moment to center yourself. Turn your attention within. The seat of the soul is the center of the forehead. So consider yourself to be there in your body, in the center of the forehead, like a beautiful star, quiet, shining, and beautiful. And just let yourself gently go into stillness. Let your mind let go of the thoughts of the everyday world, the thoughts of the day that has just passed. And you're just coming to yourself. Keeping this thought that I am not my body, I am the light within. I am spiritual energy, a being with consciousness. I do everything through my body, but for now, let me just recede from the body, turn within, and just be with myself in the inner space of my mind and heart. And take a step above and beyond to where there is an extraordinary light source. That is beautiful, quiet, and most powerful energy that I feel, that surrounds me. And that is also a point that radiates light, energy, pulsations of something beautiful, sweet, loving, and healing. And I let it just fill me. And flow over and beyond me to wherever it has to go. And I am in the stillness, in the flow, getting sustained. Leaned, energized, and restored to my essential self. And then gently let yourself return back to a normal everyday state. still holding that feeling of stillness and energy as you interact with people, places, objects in the world. Thank you very much.